Pack your tools. Ethan, you're fired, Victoria said as the prototype's dying turbine clicked behind us. I stood beneath the white glare of Hangar 4, where the failed engine still leaked heat into the cold air. Burned lubricant sharpened every breath. Around the aircraft, 12 board members watched from behind a folding steel table, their polished shoes untouched by the black residue coating my boots. Victoria Hale stood at its center in a charcoal suit, one hand resting on the test report. The ignition sequence followed the approved parameters, I said. The failure began after the control system rejected the vibration correction. The aircraft failed. Yes. You supervised the test. Her voice struck the aluminum walls and came back colder. Beyond her shoulder, the prototype's cooling skin ticked like a clock. A red warning lamp continued to pulse inside the cockpit, washing the glass with slow flashes of crimson. I also submitted a revised engine analysis 3 weeks ago, I said. It's in the blue folder. No one reached for it. Victoria slid a termination document across the table. The paper whispered over the brushed metal and stopped at my hand. Hale Aeronautics cannot stake its future on explanations after a public failure. One director lowered his eyes. Another closed the report without reading past its first page. Near the hangar doors, 2 engineers who had worked beside me for 6 years stared at the floor. Sign it, Victoria said, or security can escort you out. I looked at the pen, then at the aircraft. A faint tremor moved through its left nacelle, even though the turbine had nearly stopped. I had felt that rhythm through the soles of my boots during the test. 3 short pulses, a pause, then one deeper shudder. It had not belonged to my engine. Did anyone review the vibration maps attached to my drawings? I asked. This meeting is over. Victoria, those maps matter. So did today's demonstration. She turned the termination page toward me. Your access ends immediately. There are moments when defending your dignity means speaking. There are others when the room has already chosen pride over truth, and another word would only become fuel for its judgment. I signed my name. The pen scratched loudly enough to quiet the hangar. Victoria took the document without meeting my eyes. I removed my badge and placed it beside her hand. Then I crossed the concrete floor to my workbench, where the surface smelled of cutting oil and warm copper. Into my dented red toolbox went 3 torque wrenches, a micrometer, Lily's crayon drawing of an airplane, and the photograph taped beneath the lid. Last came the blue folder, the engine plans no one had opened. Its corners were soft from months of handling, and handwritten calculations filled every margin. I fastened the brass latches. Click, click. No one stopped me. At the security line, I surrendered my keys and pushed through the hangar door. Evening air struck my face, clean and cold after the metallic heat inside. Behind me, executives gathered around the silent prototype as if my departure had repaired it. I carried the toolbox toward the parking lot, but the abandoned warning lamp kept flashing through the glass. Then the left nacelle shuddered again. 3 quick pulses, 1 pause, 1 deep vibration, and I stopped walking. 3 quick pulses rattled through the hangar glass, followed by a low tremor Ethan felt through the asphalt beneath his boots. Jet fuel hung sharp in the freezing air, and the warning lamp painted the left nacelle red every other second. Ethan set down his toolbox, unlatched it, and pulled out the blue folder. The vibration was not random. It matched a waveform he had circled weeks earlier, a harmonic resonance traveling from the engine mount into the fuel line. During the failed test, the left engine had supposedly been inactive. It should not have moved at all. Ethan looked toward the security doors. If it repeats at altitude, his fingers stopped on a calculation. The higher cruise load would amplify the oscillation until a bracket fractured. Fuel could reach a hot surface before the cockpit received a useful warning. The prototype had not merely failed. It had survived a rehearsal for disaster. Ethan opened his phone beneath the cold white parking lights and photographed every marked page. His company account had already been disabled, so he addressed the message from his personal email to Victoria, the chief flight safety officer, and Hale Aeronautics certification team. The subject line contained 5 words: ground the fleet, immediate harmonic risk. He attached the calculations, test timestamps, and a plain language explanation no executive could mistake for wounded pride. Do not fly the current nacelle configuration above 30,000 feet. Inspect engine mounts and fuel line brackets before further testing. The left side vibration persisted after shutdown, proving the fault is structural rather than pilot-induced. His thumb hovered above send. A warning from the man Victoria had just dismissed could be treated as unauthorized possession of company data. Hale's lawyers might accuse him of stealing proprietary information. They could bury what remained of his reputation across an industry built on referrals, clearances, and quiet phone calls. Inside the toolbox, Lily's crayon airplane rested against the photograph beneath the lid. Its purple wings were uneven, and 3 yellow stars floated above the words, "Dad makes them safe." Ethan pressed send. The phone chimed once. No salary, title, or apology waited on the other side of that message. Only pilots who might never know his name. Inside the executive conference room, Victoria's phone vibrated against the polished table. She read the subject line, then glanced through the glass at Ethan standing alone beneath the parking lights. "Delete it," an executive said. "He's trying to protect himself." "Archive it for legal," another replied. No response. Victoria opened the first attachment. Blue calculations filled the screen, dense but orderly, ending with a predicted vibration signature. 3 sharp pulses, a pause, then 1 deep oscillation. From beyond the glass came 3 metallic knocks. Silence. Then the nacelle gave a heavy shudder that trembled through the conference room floor. Coffee rippled inside Victoria's untouched cup. Her eyes moved from the engine to Ethan's warning, but her hand did not reach for the grounding switch. Ethan closed the toolbox and walked toward the employee parking gate. Behind him, his final act as a Hale engineer sat time-stamped on every safety server the company controlled. By morning, someone would have to choose between the word of a discarded father and an aircraft already scheduled to fly. Cold rain glazed the airport access road by sunrise, turning the runway lights into blurred ribbons of red and white. Inside Ethan's truck, the heater clicked without warmth while rejection emails appeared one after another on his phone. Position withdrawn. Not a suitable fit. We've decided not to proceed. Ethan called the 3rd recruiter before the screen dimmed. "You said my experience was exactly what you needed." "It is," the man replied, lowering his voice. "But Hale flagged your termination." "For what cause?" A pause crackled over the speakers. They used one word, Ethan. "Useless." The call ended. Rain drummed against the roof as Ethan rested both hands on the steering wheel. On the passenger seat, his red toolbox held the unread engine plans and Lily's crayon airplane beneath its scratched metal lid. By Friday, every major aviation employer within 500 miles had closed its door. The blacklisting cost him something the firing had not: the right to earn a living in the only profession he had ever known. That afternoon, Lily sat beside him in the truck, her sneakers tapping above the floor mat as they passed the far end of the municipal airfield. Beyond a sagging chain-link fence stood an abandoned hangar with rust streaking its corrugated walls. One sliding door hung crooked on its track. Weeds pushed through the concrete apron, and an old windsock snapped in the wet crosswind. Lily pressed her drawing against the window. Could airplanes live there? Ethan looked at the for lease sign, then at the final balance in his bank account. Only the small ones. Small ones still need to be safe. The rain softened. Somewhere beyond the clouds, a piston engine buzzed toward the runway. By sunset, Ethan had signed a month-to-month lease with a deposit that consumed nearly everything left after groceries. No polished lobby waited inside. Only pigeon feathers, cold steel, and a floor slick with decades of oil. The air smelled of mildew and stale aviation fuel. Lily dragged a broom twice her height across the concrete, while Ethan reset the door rollers with parts salvaged from a broken workbench. She scrubbed grime from a cracked office window. He rewired 2 fluorescent fixtures. When the lights finally flickered alive, their pale hum revealed a roof patched with mismatched aluminum and enough space for 1 aircraft at a time. Ethan bolted his workbench to the floor and placed Lily's drawing above it. Beneath the crooked airplane, her purple letters read, "My dad makes them safe." For 6 days, no one came. Then a faded Cessna 172 rolled to a stop outside, its engine coughing unevenly in the freezing morning air. The pilot climbed down and glanced at the empty hangar. "You the mechanic?" "Engineer," Ethan said. "Mechanic today. What do you charge?" Ethan listened to the engine stumble, caught the sharp scent of unburned fuel, and opened his toolbox. "Nothing if I can't fix it." Lily raised the hangar door herself, straining against the chain until sunlight crossed the stained floor. 2 hours later, the Cessna's engine settled into a clean, steady rhythm. The pilot paid and folded bills, then asked Ethan to inspect a cargo plane that had been burning too much fuel on short routes. Ethan looked at the little hangar, the rescued workbench, and the name Lily had painted unevenly across a scrap of aluminum. Cole Skyworks. "Bring it Monday," he said. The pilot nodded toward the narrow doorway. "That aircraft won't fit in here." Ethan slid the red toolbox shut. "Then by Monday, we make the door wider." The aluminum door frame screamed beneath the cutting wheel, spraying orange sparks across the cool concrete, while the smell of scorched paint filled the abandoned hangar. By Monday morning, Ethan had widened the opening by 6 feet. Lily pulled the chain, and the patched door rattled upward as a weathered twin-engine cargo plane rolled toward the crooked Cole Skyworks sign. "She burns 30 gallons too much every trip," the pilot said. "Engines check clean." "Then the engines aren't the problem. Can you prove that?" Ethan ran his palm beneath the wing root, feeling rivets vibrate against his fingertips as the turbines cooled with metallic ticks. Sunlight revealed oily streaks curling behind 2 poorly shaped fairings. He removed one panel, measured the airflow channels, then unfolded the engine drawings no one at Hale Aeronautics had bothered to read. By noon, cardboard templates covered Lily's workbench. By sunset, Ethan had designed new fairings and revised the propeller synchronization settings to reduce drag without compromising payload. The pilot studied the calculations while hot wind pushed the scent of jet fuel through the open hangar. Hale engineers charged 6 figures for this. Ethan handed him the drawings. "Test it before you praise it." 70 miles away, a Hale Aeronautics demonstrator climbed through 12,000 feet with 6 clients aboard. A low shudder entered the left nacelle. Coffee trembled inside paper cups. The co-pilot heard a sharp metallic snap, and the fuel pressure warning flashed amber. "Power back," declaring an emergency. Nearest runway, 11 miles. The cabin lights flickered as the aircraft banked through gray cloud. Rain struck the windshield like thrown gravel. An acrid fuel odor seeped into the rear cabin. The pilots landed safely, but inspectors found the fractured bracket exactly where Ethan's warning had predicted. By nightfall, federal officials grounded Hale's entire demonstrator fleet. In Victoria's glass conference room, phones buzzed against the black table while the city glowed cold beneath the windows. Her largest prospective customer canceled its order pending a full safety review, the first major contract Hale Aeronautics had ever lost under her leadership. "How much?" Victoria asked. The finance chief slid a tablet toward her. $900 million, including service options. And the warning? No one answered. The ventilation system whispered overhead. On the screen sat Ethan's email, time-stamped before the incident, with the fracture location outlined in red. Victoria pressed her thumb against the unread attachment until the glass dimmed beneath it. Back at the municipal airfield, the cargo pilot pushed the modified aircraft down the runway. Its engines rose into a smooth, even note, cleaner than before, while Lily stood beside Ethan in the chill dawn air, holding a clipboard against her coat. 2 hours later, the aircraft returned. The pilot climbed down, crossed the sun-warmed tarmac, and placed the fuel report on Ethan's workbench. 18% less, he said. Same load. Same route. Lily traced the number with a grease-smudged finger. Ethan checked the figures twice, then closed the folder without celebration. Run it again. Already scheduled. The pilot looked toward the small sign above the widened door. My company has 12 more aircraft. Across town, Victoria received a photograph from the same airfield, a battered cargo plane beneath the words Cole Skyworks, and beside it, Ethan's fairing design attached to a verified fuel report. Hale had lost its first major contract in silence. Ethan had just been offered an entire fleet. Rain ticked against the corrugated roof while an email attachment glowed on the workshop's second-hand laptop. The air smelled of wet asphalt, machine oil, and coffee left too long on the warmer. Ethan stood beneath a humming fluorescent tube as columns of test data filled the screen, original figures beside altered ones, each revision stamped with an internal Hale Aeronautics account. "Dad," Lily said from the workbench, "is that your test?" It was. Then why are the numbers different? Ethan enlarged the audit trail. His correction factors had been deleted. Vibration readings had been shifted below the safety threshold. Finally, his electronic approval had been copied onto a report he had never signed. Attached was a message from a Hale engineer. We were ordered to accept the revised file. Now legal is preparing to blame the entire propulsion team. This proves what they did to you. The cargo pilot, waiting beside the open hangar door, read enough to understand. Rainwater darkened the shoulders of his jacket. Send it to the press, he said. By sunrise, Victoria Hale will have nowhere to hide. Ethan looked toward Lily's handmade Cole Skyworks sign, its blue letters trembling whenever wind pressed against the widened door. One upload could clear his name. It could also expose the names of junior engineers whose only offense had been obeying a superior while mortgages, medical insurance, and children waited at home. No, Ethan said. They called you useless. That doesn't make them innocent. It doesn't make the whole team guilty either. Ethan closed the media draft and called Hale's engineering compliance office. His voice remained quiet, but every word carried the weight of verified timestamps. You have 40 minutes to withdraw the notices against the propulsion team. Their signatures were copied after submission. The attorney on the speakerphone shifted papers. Mr. Cole, possession of internal files may violate your separation agreement. Then compare the server logs. Are you threatening Hale Aeronautics? I'm protecting engineers your company is preparing to sacrifice. Silence settled beneath the fluorescent buzz. Ethan sent the evidence, not to reporters, but simultaneously to federal investigators, the Engineers Council, and Hale's independent audit committee. He included a narrow authorization. Use the files to clear the innocent staff, not to publish proprietary flight data. The evidence could restore his reputation overnight. Yet he surrendered control of the story so others would not be destroyed with the guilty. By noon, the termination notices were suspended. Before sunset, 5 engineers arrived at the abandoned hangar carrying tool cases and cardboard boxes. Their shoes squeaked across the damp concrete. Cold air followed them inside. One placed a Hale badge on Ethan's workbench. You saved our licenses, she said. We couldn't save your job. Ethan slid incorporation papers across the scarred wood. Cole Skyworks LLC was printed above 6 signature lines. I'm not offering revenge, he said. I'm offering work we can sign our own names to. Lily set out pens, then carefully taped her airplane drawing beside the new company seal. One by one, the engineers signed. The last signature changed the little repair shop into an aviation company with a verified fuel-saving design, a 12-aircraft opportunity, and a team Hale could no longer command. Then the laptop chimed. Hale Aeronautics had filed an emergency claim demanding Ethan surrender the design, the evidence, and every engineer in the hangar by 9 o'clock the next morning. Ethan turned the screen toward his new partners. Now, he said, we decide what our names are worth. By dawn, the emergency claim lay beside 6 untouched cups of coffee, its white pages cold beneath the hangar's fluorescent glare. The air smelled of wet concrete and hydraulic oil. Ethan had spent the night with counsel, answering Hale's demand line by line. But the filing had frozen Cole Skyworks' operating account until a judge could review ownership of the design. Payroll was due Friday. The cargo aircraft components had to be ordered that morning. Without either, the company bearing 6 signatures would survive less than a week. At 8:17, polished shoes crossed the oil-stained floor. A private aviation investor placed a leather folder on Ethan's workbench and glanced at the former Hale engineers gathered beneath Lily's handmade sign. I'll settle the claim. On what terms? $8 million today. The hangar went quiet except for rainwater dripping into a metal bucket. The offer would fund the 12-aircraft contract, secure certification work, and keep Cole Skyworks alive. Then Ethan reached the second page. The investor would own the fuel-saving patent outright. The 5 engineers would be dismissed before noon. Ethan would remain as chief engineer under a 5-year employment agreement, well paid and safely controlled. Their liabilities, the investor said. You're the asset. One engineer lowered her eyes toward the Hale badge still resting on the workbench. Another slowly removed his hand from the company seal. Lily stood near the office doorway, holding 2 paper cups of cocoa. Warm steam curled past the airplane drawing she had taped to the wall. They signed when I had nothing to guarantee them, Ethan said. Now you have something, the investor replied. A chance not to lose everything. Ethan closed the folder. Then invest in all of us. That isn't the offer. Then there is no offer. The folder snapped shut. The shoes receded across the concrete, and moments later a black sedan disappeared beyond the rain-streaked hangar doors. No applause followed. Dignity rarely sounds triumphant when the electric bill is overdue. Ethan drove through the gray morning to the small house where Lily had learned to ride a bicycle in the cracked driveway. Inside, the furnace clicked against the cold. Pencil marks recording her height climbed the kitchen doorway, and a faded photograph of her first air show sat beside the mortgage statement. The loan officer pushed a stack of documents across a walnut desk. If Cole Skyworks fails, foreclosure can begin in 30 days. Ethan looked through the glass wall. Lily sat in the lobby with her backpack against her knees, tracing an airplane across a scrap of paper. She could not hear him, but she saw the pen. "Is there another way?" he asked. "Not before Friday." Ethan signed. The house became collateral for a company Hale was trying to erase. By afternoon, the account restriction had been answered with a secured credit line. Ethan wired payroll, ordered the aircraft components, and handed each engineer a work schedule instead of a termination notice. The first cutting machine awakened with a metallic whine. Bright curls of aluminum fell onto the shop floor. Lily entered carrying a cardboard box from home. "Are we moving?" she asked. Ethan knelt and tightened one loose strap on her backpack. "Maybe. Because of the company? Because a name means nothing if we abandon people to protect it." She studied him, then placed the box beneath her drawing and switched on the desk lamp. Warm light spread across Cole Skyworks. At 5:42, the hangar printer rattled. Hale Aeronautics had escalated its claim, requesting an injunction that could halt every Cole aircraft modification within 48 hours. Ethan lifted the page while the new machine continued cutting behind him. This time, Hale was not merely asking for his work. Victoria was forcing him to prove who had owned it all along. Rain ticked against the black windows of Hale Aeronautics while the archive scanner pulled another yellow drawing beneath its cold blue light. The building smelled of toner, damp wool, and coffee burned hours ago. Victoria had dismissed her attorneys after they brought her the injunction papers. This search would carry her name, not theirs. "Show me the original development records." Those files were migrated. "Then restore them." The records manager hesitated beside a humming server rack. "Some authorship fields are blank." Victoria placed Ethan's patent diagrams beside Hale's earliest propulsion platform drawings. The mounting geometry matched. So did the airflow corrections, the synchronization tables, and one handwritten notation in the margin. Dignity lives in the details. She had seen those words on the warning Ethan sent before the fleet was grounded. The restored audit trail appeared line by line. Ethan Cole had created the modular propulsion platform on which Hale's most valuable aircraft family had been built. Years of licensing revenue, government contracts, and market valuation rested upon it. Later revisions showed his name removed, his contributor code reassigned, and his objections buried by the same executive who had altered the vibration data. Victoria's hand stopped on the glass screen. In the window, dawn turned the rain silver over a company whose billions suddenly looked borrowed. By 8:15, the main hangar lights burned white above employees gathered between grounded aircraft. Camera shutters clicked. Ventilation fans pushed the sharp odor of hydraulic fluid through the silence. Victoria walked to the microphone without her usual board members flanking her. Ethan Cole designed the core platform that made this company valuable. A murmur moved through the hangar. His name was removed. His data was altered, and I fired him before I examined the truth. The executive responsible stepped toward her. "Victoria," legal advised, "your access is terminated. You'll destroy Hale." "No. I helped you hide the man who built it." Security collected his badge. Victoria then ordered the injunction withdrawn, suspended Hale's ownership claim, and released the restored authorship records to federal investigators and the Independent Audit Committee. No polished statement softened the cost. Hale's board would question her judgment, investors would see the fraud, and every employee now knew their billionaire CEO had mistaken control for truth. An hour later, tires hissed across the wet pavement outside Cole Skyworks. Inside, aluminum dust glittered beneath warm work lamps as Ethan's team fitted the first fairing. Lily's cardboard box remained beneath her airplane drawing. Victoria entered alone, carrying no attorney, no security detail, only a sealed folder. The cutting machine wound down, leaving the hangar quiet enough to hear rain dripping from her coat. She placed the corrected records before Ethan. His name appeared on every foundational drawing. "The claim is withdrawn," she said. "The man who erased you is gone." Ethan did not touch the folder. "Why are you here?" Victoria looked past him at the former Hale engineers working beneath the Cole Skyworks sign. "Because Hale has grounded aircraft, broken contracts, and thousands of people who did not commit my mistakes." Her voice lowered. "I need you to save the company." Ethan's wrench settled against the steel table with a single hard click. Victoria Hale had finally returned what had been stolen. Now she was asking the man she had cast out to decide what her empire was worth, and on whose terms it would survive. The fluorescent lights hummed above the steel table, their pale reflection trembling across the rainwater beneath Victoria's shoes. Beyond the hangar doors, wind pressed against corrugated metal, while warm air carried the smells of hydraulic fluid, wet concrete, and freshly cut aluminum. "I won't come back as your employee," Ethan said. Victoria's fingers tightened around the sealed folder. "Then Hale may not survive." "I know." Silence spread beneath the rafters. Ethan turned toward the 5 former Hale engineers, their faces silvered by work lamps, then looked at Lily's airplane drawing pinned beside the Cole Skyworks sign. Thousands of workers stood behind Victoria's request: machinists, mechanics, inspectors, people with mortgages, and children who had never touched the corrupted data. Ethan pulled a clean drafting sheet across the table. "I won't save your position," he said. "I'll save their jobs. Tell me what it takes." "Operational control." Victoria did not answer. Rain rattled the hangar roof as Ethan drew 3 firm lines beneath the Cole Skyworks letterhead. Hale's grounded fleet would be inspected under his authority. Every employee not involved in fraud would remain protected during restructuring. Every platform built from his work would carry his ownership and licensing terms in permanent corporate records. "You're asking me to surrender my company." "No, I'm asking you to surrender control of the emergency you created." Victoria paced once across the cold floor, her heels clicking between the tool cabinets. Without her signature, Hale could keep its name and lose its contracts, factories, and workforce. With it, the company might survive, but its billionaire founder would no longer command the rescue. She stopped beside an unfinished fuel-saving assembly, brushed one thumb over its ribbed aluminum housing, and looked toward the engineers Ethan had refused to abandon. "The board will fight this." "Then choose who you answer to. The board that protected your authority, or the workers paying for it." Victoria opened the folder and removed the corrected intellectual property certificates. She set them beside Ethan's terms, took a black pen from her coat, and signed the transfer of emergency operational authority. The scratch of the nib sounded louder than the storm. "Effective immediately," she said, "you lead the recovery." Ethan added his signature only after she initialed the employment protections and acknowledged Cole Skyworks as the lawful owner of his fuel-saving patent and Hale's foundational aviation platform. No applause followed. Quiet dignity rarely needed one. Ethan crossed to the hangar control panel and switched on the overhead work grid. White light rolled across the cargo aircraft, station by station, until its wings gleamed from nose to tail. "Call Hale's plant managers," he told Victoria. "Open every maintenance record. Freeze executive bonuses. Keep the night shifts on payroll." Victoria took out her phone and made the calls herself. Within minutes, printers began chattering, laptops opened, and the former Hale engineers moved toward the aircraft with calibrated tools. The hierarchy that had once branded Ethan useless now waited for his instructions. Then Victoria's phone vibrated. She read the message without blinking and placed it on the table where Ethan could see. Hale's lenders would release only 7 days of emergency credit under the new command structure. Ethan studied the deadline, then looked through the open hangar toward the storm-dark runway. He had gained control of an aviation empire on the edge of collapse. Now he had 1 week to prove it could still fly. Morning sun rolled across the runway, turning 12 silver aircraft into a line of fire. Turbines whined through the cool air, jet fuel sharpened the smell of wet concrete, and the blue Cole Skyworks emblem stood beside Hale Aeronautics on every tail. 1 year after the 7-day deadline, Ethan watched the final cargo plane climb without a tremor. His fuel-saving system had cut consumption by 18%. Hale's grounded fleet had returned to service, and not one innocent worker had lost a job. All 12 are airborne, the cargo pilot said through the radio. And the numbers are better than promised. Ethan lowered the headset. Send the data to every customer. No hidden figures. Behind the glass wall, Victoria heard him and nodded to the finance chief. The old executive boardroom had been rebuilt as an operations center. No locked archives. No erased names. No decisions concealed behind polished doors. Screens glowed across brushed steel while engineers worked beneath the steady hiss of ventilation. The finance chief placed a report before Victoria. The contract, once canceled at a loss of $900 million, had been replaced by orders worth more than 3 times that amount. Hale's debt was current. Cole Skyworks held the patents. Ethan held controlling authority over the combined aviation group. Victoria took the microphone before the industry press gathered below. Camera shutters cracked through the hangar. This company survived because Ethan Cole refused to let my failure become thousands of families' punishment, she said. The technology was his. The recovery was his. The authority is his. A year earlier, her signature had transferred emergency control. That morning, she signed the permanent charter, ending the Hale family's controlling interest and naming Ethan chief executive of the newly formed Hale Aviation Group. The applause came slowly, then rose against the ribbed steel ceiling like thunder. Ethan did not step toward the cameras. Instead, he crossed to the 5 former Hale engineers and handed each of them an equity certificate. You stayed when staying cost something, he said. Now you own what you helped rebuild. The cargo pilot laughed softly. You could have owned all of it. That was never the point. Near the hangar entrance, Lily's airplane drawing rested inside a simple frame beside the original Cole Skyworks sign. Its paper had curled at the corners, and a streak of blue crayon still crossed one uneven wing. Lily stood beside it as Ethan approached, holding an envelope from the loan officer. The mortgage had been discharged in full. Their home was safe. Ethan gave her the stamped document, but she looked past it toward the aircraft lifting into the bright sky. Does this mean you rule the whole aviation industry now? She asked. He crouched until the engine wind stirred both their jackets. It means no one here gets called useless for telling the truth. Across the hangar, Victoria removed the brass nameplate from her former private office and carried it to the shared engineering floor. There was no ceremony in the gesture, only the quiet scrape of metal against wood and the dignity of someone learning that accountability was not humiliation, but grace. Ethan extended his hand. Victoria accepted it before the workers, the cameras, and the machines their choices had saved. The room became still. The man once dismissed with a toolbox now led the skies. But his greatest victory was that the woman who had taken away his place finally helped him build one where no worthy name could ever be erased again.